everyone, welcome to Bold as Brass podcast. This is a bonus episode to share with you the panel discussion that we held in July to celebrate hitting 10,000 downloads. They all introduced themselves on the recording, except Ashley, who's partly cut off. Sorry Ashley, my fault. But our panel was made up of the following people: previous guests of our show, Ashley Killam, Andy Baker, Amy Shoemaker Bliss, Anneke Scott, Andy Kershaw, Callum Rookes, Christian Jones, Hailey Brinnel and Stephen Mead. We hope you enjoy this bonus episode, our 10,000 download celebration discussion.
I'm the general manager for Rising Tide Music Press, and I just teach and do a little bit of everything out here. Oh, I will toss it to Andy.
Hey, great. Thank you very much. I'm Andy Kershaw. I'm a tuba player and early brass specialist based in London. And I run the ensemble Queen Victoria's Consort and teach some of the low brass players at Cambridge University and Brunel University. And there we go. That's what I'm up to. And I can't, for the life of me, remember who I'm passing it over to. So who's next?
You've got the easiest one to remember, Andy. It goes to Andy.
Oh, there we go.
Thanks, Andy.
Oh, sorry about that.
Appreciate the love.
We'll make it up over the time. It's fine.
I'm Andy Baker. I am a trombone professor and player and a composer sometimes and a conductor sometimes. And I live in Chicago, although I'm from London, but I am actually now in England. So I'm on the right time zone and delighted to see everybody and all of that. And over to you, Callum.
Hello, I'm Callum Rookes. I'm a tuba player in the Central Band of the Royal Air Force, having just come from the Army in the Band of the Coldstream Guards. I have ambitions above my station and I really quite like conducting these days, so that's what I like to do. And I'm passing it on to Hailey. Over to you.
Hi, I'm Hailey Brinnel. I'm a trombonist, vocalist, and educator in Philadelphia in the US. I teach at the University of the Arts here in Philly. And I'm going to, oh gosh, wait, I left the chat.
Were you going to Annika?
Yes.
Hello, my name's Annika Scott. I'm a horn player based in London, but normally I'm working all over the world. I specialize in all the varieties of historic horns, basically all the different configurations of our instrument from roughly the late 17th century, pretty much up to the present day. I'm principal horn of a number of the leading period instrument orchestras, such as John Eliot Gardner's Orchestre Révolutionnaire Romantique, and the artistic director of the period instrument brass ensemble, the Prince Regent's Band, and co-founder of the harmony band Boxwood and Brass. And I teach at the Royal Welsh up in Cardiff and Trinity Laban here in London. And I am passing to Amy.
Hello, I'm Amy Shoemaker Bliss. I previously taught at Rowan University in Glassboro, New Jersey. And so we just moved from the Philadelphia area to the Columbus area in Ohio. So I'm currently kind of unaffiliated because everything is still shut down. So I'm waiting to get started in my new area. And during all of these shutdowns, we started a new podcast, which is called New World Brasscast, and it's all about the North American British brass band scene. So after you listen to this, feel free to hop on over and check us out. And I'm passing over to Steve Mead. Hi, Steve.
Hi, everyone. This is Stephen Mead, and I play euphonium. And until about 16 months ago, I used to travel with my euphonium for a living, playing concerts. And I'm counting down the days when it can tentatively start again. I've got 3 international trips in the next month and fingers very much crossed for all of them. I've taught at the Royal Northern College for 32 years and I enjoy all kinds of music, but obviously most people know me for holding and playing a euphonium. So that's me, and I'm delighted to hand over to Christian.
Hello, everybody. So like Stephen, I teach at the Royal Northern College of Music, not quite for 32 years now, from the junior department. If you include my time at the junior department, I've actually been there nearly 10 years now, prior to which I spent 10 very happy years in London and 2 years in Cardiff. And doing what, you may ask? Holding a bass trombone and a contrabass trombone, not usually at the same time. And I have some lovely con bass trombones. I'm sponsored by Conselma, and I have a Tyne contrabass trombone, which is great, really good fun. My wife is a tenor trombone player, so just in the corner over there, you can see there's like a graveyard of trombones everywhere. We keep creeping down into our music room each morning and wondering whether there might be some more, you know. So anyway, that's me.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for being here and having taken part in this podcast several times and putting up with my nonsense repeatedly. So we've had some questions submitted ready for this evening's panel. So I'm going to put these all out to you, and you feel free to jump in on anything that really tickles your fancy. So I thought I'd start off with, because a few of us have touched on there what we've been up to during COVID. It's a word that I almost feel naughty saying, but first question that was put in was actually put forward by my mum. Thanks, mum. She asked, as a non-musician as well, she asked this. She asked, what's the biggest positive change any of us have seen in the music industry to come out of the pandemic that should stay, if you feel like there is one?
Well, speaking from the amateur world of orchestras and stuff, I think it's the weekly quizzes. That seems to be a big thing. So, they seem to love it. So I'm all for keeping that going.
That's very charming. Annika, what do you think?
I think it's the dissemination of knowledge. I think one of the things that's been just wonderful is how so many musicians from so many different walks of life have been communicating what it is we do, thoughts about what we do. It's things like your podcast getting going and everything. It really feels as if we've got this wonderfully interconnected world sharing all this information. And I feel so hopeful for emerging generations of musicians who are now able to tap in to all this knowledge. It's a great democratization of what we do. So I'm really hopeful that this will lead to a real resurgence of interest in what we do, thanks to us all sharing this information.
I'd just add to what Annika said, because I know that Annika and my ensembles have both got involved with online seminars and say podcasts like this, and we've had to accept that we do need to know how to, and we do need to be able to, at fairly short notice, record, edit, put together things that need to go out online. The one thing that obviously we need to do, and we need to perhaps have a little bit more help at knowing how to do, is therefore how to monetize that side of it as well, because there's obviously the side of it where certainly for the brass bands that I conduct, I've been more than happy to help by doing things online, and very happy to do so. But when it comes to, some of the big orchestras and that sort of thing, obviously that's great. They've got a budget. They've been helped directly by the Cultural Recovery Fund. But when it comes to applying for funding, that's something that's now been so heavily hit upon by so many people, and there just isn't enough to go round. So and these funding grants are, as quite a few people on this screen will know, incredibly time consuming, and they're a job almost in themselves, and I've loved every minute of doing them. It doesn't stop you feeling a little frustrated when you don't get one and delighted when you do, but I think Annika's ideas about sharing knowledge, especially from the historical brass world, where people can get interested in something I think it's almost a little more accepted across in Europe and the UK at the moment. In Europe and the US at the moment. It's just been lovely to share that, and that's something that I think we will try and continue to do. Our online content, Annika, I think you'll probably do the same, won't you? I mean, yours has been incredibly successful and it's looked great.
Yeah, it's just such a wonderful opportunity to share, and I just keep on hoping that if younger generations take what we're doing and run with it, that will be such a groundswell for, we play instruments which, as a horn player, it's one of those instruments that so few kids are taking up, and so few people are coming into the profession. So I'm really hopeful that this will be something that will lead to a groundswell.
Yeah,
Andy's got his hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've got a few hands up.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a couple of things. One is the streaming of gigs, which has been great. And one of the venues I play at quite frequently in Chicago went immediately to streaming very early on, and in fact streamed like 3 nights a week through the pandemic, And now we have audiences back. They're still streaming, and I know that had a lot of people watching from all over the world who obviously wouldn't be able to come to Chicago to the gigs. And then the other thing that I did some of early on was playing just outdoors in my neighborhood, on a Sunday afternoon. And the people who came out to that, and we would maybe stream those too, but people have been asking us to do it again because my neighbors are not going to come downtown on a Thursday night to a club in Chicago, but it's an opportunity for people to hear music that wouldn't normally come and hear it. So I think both of those.
Yeah, nice. So let's hop over to Amy. You've been sitting patiently with your hand up as well.
I feel like I'm in school. I think one of the big things moving to a new city and not really knowing a whole lot of people or having connections, I just immediately jumped online. And what I found was people who previously just thought that finding a euphonium teacher was out of reach. Someone in the middle of Iowa who the closest euphonium specialist is 2 hours away, 3 hours away. And I know that teaching online isn't as effective as teaching in person, but to that kid who may have never met a euphonium player who specifically studied on the instrument, it's a great benefit to realize that we can reach out online. And I have a Malaysian euphonium student. I have a student in the middle of Iowa, and I'm tutoring a student in China on music theory. He's rounding into probably the American second semester of college theory, and he's 10 years old. And he doesn't have someone who's taught college theory before. And so here I am in Columbus, Ohio, teaching this kid in Beijing, and it works. So I think that this reaching out and this connectivity, all around the world, we're finding people and reaching out in ways that I had no clue was really possible before this.
A sense of community.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. Ashley, I think you were the next one in class with your hand up.
I mean, so much of this makes me just think of the accessibility, as musicians, no matter what area we're in, we're finding ways to be flexible, because what's the other option? We don't have careers happening. And I'm, with a lot of the work that I do and a lot of the research I do, I'm finding it in terms of the rep we play as well. Just thinking that a lot of younger musicians, especially that I've been talking to, and colleagues of mine, are realizing that we don't have to play the same couple of pieces, and with not having all of these gigs, we can spend a little more time doing this research and finding new stuff and being able to learn ways to incorporate that in and begin to showcase new voices and make connections with new composers. But the connection thing too is so big. I've met so many cool people that I would have never a year ago, when we were a little over a year ago, but a year and a half ago, when we barely knew what Zoom was, I couldn't have imagined all of just the friendships that have stemmed in the past year. It's astounding to me.
Yeah, I remember when I started my podcast, which was 18 months ago, I think looking at the panel that we've got here, I maybe had met 3 of you in advance of doing the podcast. And I couldn't have done it if Zoom didn't exist. I literally couldn't do it. I've still not done an in-person interview. So we'll see how that one happens. Anyway, Christian, sorry, Annika, go ahead.
Just about sorry, Christian. Just turning the tables for 1 second and asking you a question. Was your podcast something that came directly out of the pandemic, or was this something that you had in the pipeline for? Okay, yeah.
Well,
bravo for getting going so quickly. It's a great job you've done.
Yeah, I mean, I'd thought for a long time that I wanted to create some sort of brass related online content, and I'm really nosy. And so when I suddenly had enough time to spend like calling people up and sort of just, I don't know, being annoying at them for an hour, and then turning it around into something that I could share with other people, I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't had so much time at home to, I don't know, even put the research in on how does one do a podcast. Spoiler alert, still don't know the answer to that question. And, you know, they're meeting people and organizing things. It all came from just having enough time to do it. So, I mean, I'm very grateful because this keeps me busy and stops me climbing the walls when I have nothing to do. Anyway, Christian, I'll come to you and then I'll go to another question. So, Christian, what do you have to say on this one?
Just to echo a lot of the comments that have already been made about community, it's just been extraordinary, obviously in good ways and bad ways, the last 18 months. But hopefully Annika won't mind me saying that we were at college together. And back in those days, when the year began with a 1 rather than a 2. Only just. Anyway, there was a computer room on the 5th floor of the building where we studied Royal Academy of Music in London, and just the idea that we would be able to connect, and you know, we'd all have a computer each for a start, and it would be quite a slim thing that wasn't too cumbersome
amongst all of us.
It's just extraordinary, isn't it? How things have moved on. I have a neighbour who's a solicitor. Is that an attorney in America? Anyway, he does legal stuff, and he was saying as recently as 5 years ago, he wouldn't have been able to do his work from home in the way that he can now. And in some respects, maybe in the arts, we need to be on our guard a bit. There'll be certain things now where the genie's out of the bottle, and we need to perhaps push back a little bit against only online lessons, for example. Someone's already mentioned the fact that it's not really a substitute. But the little anecdote I was going to quickly share was that here in the UK, we've had this clap for carers, which was on Thursday nights. Was that right, folks? Was it 8 o'clock on a Thursday, I think?
Yeah.
It seems like ages ago, the first one now. It was in March 2020, right at the end of March. So still pitch black, of course, was because we're quite a long way north here in the UK. And in the pitch black, in the street lights, you would see other people coming out of their houses, and you'd never seen them before in your own neighbourhood. And we actually made friends with quite a few people in our neighbourhood, to the extent where one guy clocked the fact that our son is quite musical, hopefully, with two trombonist parents. Who knows, that's not a given. And he bought him, I kid you not, he purchased for him a little electric guitar, which is still playing. It was just sheer altruism. Said, look, I can see he's really into music. He was actually holding a cornet at the time, but why not do a guitar as well? Great. So now, of course, he's taking acoustic guitar lessons. So there are positives, with the small caveats that it would be nice to have certain things back the way that they were, certain things.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to hop on to one of the other questions that we've had submitted. So we have quite a lot of current students, recent graduates that often listen to the podcast. And this has been submitted from a student. I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying this. I won't say your name, don't worry. But she's a recent graduate from the Birmingham Conservatoire. And she asked us, and I'm sure a lot of us have ideas and opinions on this, are there any mistakes that people make either during their time at music college or university, wherever they study, or in their early careers, that we can give them some advice on, things to steer clear of, things to be careful of? Anyone got any ideas on that? Go on, Annika.
Learn how long things take you. One of the things which I look back on my 20s as a massive learning curve was just learning how long it takes me to prepare for certain things. And it's a lot to do with just having experience. But I don't think that I was being observant. I was just kind of getting on with the job. And in retrospect, the ability to look at how long things are taking you, how long things are taking you to prepare, how do I need to prepare for that particular gig or that particular audition, whatever, and being mindful of the time. I think that's one of the things I wish I'd learned earlier, that in order to be peak fitness for that, I need to start preparing then. And it's just being observant of what you are doing.
That's a good one. Hailey, what do you reckon?
So I'm mostly from a jazz and freelance background. But what I would say is if you're in school, start looking for how you are going to earn your living outside of school while you're still there. So when you graduate, it's not a total shock. And don't be afraid to learn genres of music that maybe aren't your personal taste, but something that will pay bills, or figure out something else that pays bills while you chase, what you actually want to be playing. But that's my big thing, is be very, very thoughtful about the actual like business aspect and how you are going to earn a living.
Yeah, for sure. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same. It's that sort of moment where you walk down, in the case of where I studied, and Annika and Christian at the academy, and you sort of feel that you've spent these 4 years doing everything you can, but nobody's going to give you any employment or a career or anything, basically, when you walk down those steps, because, okay, 90% of the people that work there are incredibly generous, and they are there to help you. They're there to help you get into the profession if that's what you want to do. But then immediately you leave, they're met with a whole new load of people that are there to learn exactly the same thing. And the thing that I think, I'm happy to own up to this quite happily, is that I thought that, oh, you just do your studying and then it's fine. That's it. You're there. And I would say that moment you leave, and Stephen, I'm going to hope that you chip in with something on this, because we've worked together a little bit since. The people that you interact with as a professional or as a young professional once you leave college, the people that you trust to carry on helping your career forward. And I have about 4 people who I totally trust to listen to how I play and tell me whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. But the most important thing about all of that is to do it in a way that doesn't put you down. It actually bigs you up and makes you go for the next thing. And to have that interest in something, what Hailey was saying, for want of a better word, I know it's a bit of a colloquialism, but a portfolio career that allows you to actually get on and make a living. Because when I left the academy as a tuba player, I spent the next 2-3 years pretty much making all of my money playing early music, and really I've now got a balance back to maybe 50, well, pre-pandemic, but had a balance back to about 50-50, which I don't mind, actually, whether that balance shifts. So I'm always happy to play that game. And as I say, Stephen's one of the few people who I would love to play to and do play to, and take on everything that he says as a way of building rather than pushing you down. Because there are people out there that mean well, but don't necessarily help. And I see a lot of people nodding. It's quite easy to get a bit despondent, but you've always got to keep pushing. That moment you leave college is the time to start getting better, rather than the time to think you're the finished article. Anyway, I'll get out of the way. Thank you.
No, not at all. Oh, well, every time one person stops speaking, the screen goes like that, and then I lose the next person with their hand up. Amy, I think you were waiting next.
Yeah, I wanted to add in, one of my main professor in undergrad had something to say, and he said there are 2 ways that you can rise up. You can climb up on top of other people and get higher, or you can help everyone around you raise up as well, and then you'll all go up together. And so I sometimes see people who are trying to do the first, where they're trying to raise themselves up by putting other people down in college, and I think, or I should say university, we have Brits here. But when you leave school, those people don't disappear. They become your colleagues. And so you have to remember in your conversations and how you relate to each other, that those people are going to become your colleagues. And so if you're trying to compete with your classmates by pushing them down and not raising them up, then you're going to have a hard time networking and getting those freelance gigs and and positions when you get out, because those are going to be your classmates. Yeah.
We have an expression for that in English. Don't be a dick.
I should have just said that, Steve.
I have to call the FCC now.
Would have been a little faster. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Oh God, it's happened again. Ashley, I think you were in next.
Mine's super fast. I think the biggest thing that I was afraid of, both in undergrad and like partway through my master's, was just reaching out and networking. I was so afraid to like reach out to someone to just tell them I liked what they were doing or ask to meet up. And that's been the biggest thing in just making connections, whether it's with like composers or other people, to just reach out, because most of the time people aren't going to be dicks and they're happy to respond. But yeah, don't be afraid. No matter how big of a following someone has, they're more than likely, hopefully, going to be willing to, answer whatever question or give a little time to chat.
Yeah, for sure. Andy?
Two things I would say. One is that to not give up. Most people who end up with careers in music, the majority of them become, what you would consider successful or employable or whatever, in their late 20s and early 30s. I remember leaving college at 22 and being like, okay, well, now what? And thinking that the next day, well, now I'm a professional trombone player. What am I going to do? But really, it's the keeping going. And I mean, it's obvious when you think about it, but the people who end up in jobs are the people who don't give up. And it's so easy to get distracted from your path, particularly, I think, maybe more so in the States, where you have to worry about health insurance and so many musicians have part-time jobs, and of course you need one. And then because you're a musician, you're generally a capable person, and it's very easy to be offered a full-time job and a promotion doing something else, and you're making money and you're making rent, and it can be easy to fall into that life, and it's fine if of course it's fine to do that, but it's very easy to just get kind of taken off the path that way. So hang with it. And then I think the portfolio career is very important. I definitely have one of those too, but it's also important to identify the thing that you are really passionate about. As a where can you carve out, so they don't just need a trombone player, they need Melissa Brown or whoever it is, to be capable of doing anything, but to have that one thing where that's really where you focus. And then the last thing, I'll be quiet, it was certainly the case for me coming out of college in London, then when I moved to Chicago, and I think it's the case for most people, when you're starting out, the call you get is like 2 hours before the gig when they called everybody else. So always be ready, always be in the best shape you can be, always be ready to, with gas in the car and a clean shirt and all the rest of it, and be ready to go out and work at a moment's notice, because when you're just starting, you are the last call, so you can take the opportunities when they do come, they will.
Yeah, nice. Callum, what do you think?
Yeah, I think when I was at college, and one of the big mistakes I made was I wasn't kind to myself, and that there's a lot of mental health things that cropped up because of that. I was constantly saying to myself, I need to be this good by this time, or why aren't I this good? This guy is, or that girl is so good, so much better than me, and I'd grind myself into the ground. And coming out of college, I think we can all get so consumed by this wonderful career that we've chosen to do. Music is wonderful, and we're so privileged to be able to do it, but it can take its toll. And I think it's crucially important to realize that there's still life to be lived outside of music. And I think it's important for people to take time to go do something else. Go to a destination that you've never seen before. Go, I don't know, learn how to paint, get into poetry. There's a wonderful, colourful life to be lived. And I think that would feed into music and will inspire you. So yeah, don't forget to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, nice one. Oh, Christian, your hand's gone up now.
Yeah, just to respond again to some of these fantastic comments. This is really fun, sort of going in after everyone else has said stuff, because everyone's so good. But no, the mental health thing that Callum's just mentioned, the call with 2 hours notice that Andy mentioned, you know, all these points, what Hailey was saying about things, aspects of music that you might not naturally gravitate towards, but get into it anyway. My day job is with the Orchestra of Opera North here in Leeds, which is sort of North England. If people don't know where it is, it's sort of in the middle of the island of Great Britain. In fact, there's a big US air base near us, and they refer to that as Menwith Hill, Central Britain, which is quite a good way of describing it. For various political reasons, it never gets called that, but it is Central Britain. Anyway, now we've established where Leeds is. So, people, I have students who'll say, I'm not that into opera or something. Well, okay, maybe you're not, but you know, one of your very likely first outings into a professional career will be doing stage band in Carmen or something like that, for example. You know, so yeah, so get into it, or at least pretend you're into it and get the check. You know, so yeah, just to echo what people have already said.
And wait, can I chime in really quickly?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
didn't respond to the COVID question, so I want to tie this in.
Go ahead, that's fine.
Yeah, for me, and this ties into what everyone was just saying, the past year and a half made me sort of reevaluate the balance I was giving to things that, you know, actually truly give me happiness / things that pay the bills and maybe don't give me as much joy. And like this, I don't know about everyone else, but I'm starting to do things. I'm looking at my calendar and gigs are popping up again, at least, you know, here in the States, and I'm not taking everything. I'm knowing now, I'm like, after this past year and a half, I'm like, oh, I'm going to turn this down so I can see family that weekend or hopefully travel somewhere, and realizing that that's also a line that should be drawn in your professional career.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I've got two that I'm going to just add on to that before I head on to a different question. Two things that took me a long time to learn in and out of college was, the first one is don't be afraid to set up your own opportunities. You know, if you want to have a trombone octet and you know enough people, I don't think I know enough people, but like, find people and make it happen. It doesn't have to be the thing that makes you money. It can be something that you just do for fun, or that works on your stamina, or means that you play in an ensemble twice a week or whatever. You know, power to your elbow if it does get you gigs and there are people that want to hear it, all so much the better. But you know, you're allowed to play your instrument for not work as well. And my second one is communicate properly with people. So if someone sends you an email and you say to them, yeah, I'm probably going to take that gig, and then they give you some more details and then you just don't get back to them, like, that's not cool. If people call you up and leave your voicemail and you're not very good on the phone, tough tits, you've got to call them back. You know, it's manners, and it's what's going to get you booked another time. And poor communication like really grinds my gears. So if people can like start to work on that when you're at college, like, so much the better, because then you'll be comfortable with communicating with people. Even if you have to turn a gig down, you'll know how to do it by the time you need to be able to do it. I hope that makes sense. I'm not very good with the words all the time. Cool. So I've got a few other questions that I definitely want to make sure we squish in, and there's two that kind of tie into each other. So I'm going to kind of put both of them out there and you can answer either or both of them. And the first one is, money aside, if you could commission a composer to write something new for your instrument, who would you want to go for? And secondly, this is / how can we all make sure that we are diversifying the things that we're playing now and make our music more modern, more interesting? So there's kind of two things that tie together. Answer one, answer either, answer neither if you don't want to. Ashley, I know you've got something to say on this one. It was Ashley's question. So why don't you tell us what you think first of all, because that might help us all be able to chime in a little bit more, you know, comfortably.
Well, first, my go-to composer that if I had the funds right now, oh gosh, I mean, there'd be like hundreds, but the one I really want to is Kate Nishimura. She's a Canadian composer that is known for her band works, but she has a ton of really awesome chamber and solo and large ensemble. She's an incredible composer. So I would 100% commission her today if I could. And just in kind of like diversifying what I guess we all as musicians, I think it's important to just find the types of music, find new pieces and new composers that you like, and start to just incorporate it in, what you teach your students, in what you program. So then it's not as big of a, like, representation, inclusion. They're very big buzzwords right now after, this past year of reckoning. And it's really important that we take the steps to not be performative and just doing it because it's cool, but instead making it this long-lasting and sustainable inclusion that it's just no big deal. We just play great music that just so happens to be by a wide range of composers. And so really just kind of doing a little self-reflection on your own practice, because, whoever's listening to this and we all hear, you're all going to teach someone something at some point. And so whatever we do, whether it's in or out of music, just doing a little reflection on what we're showcasing, whether that's the videos or the pieces, and seeing how we can expand that so everyone can see themselves in the music and in the examples.
Yeah, cool. I'm going to pop to Amy next.
Yeah. If I could commission music from anyone, I would commission some works by Lucy Pankhurst. And I have. She wrote Luminaries for me for when I was featured at the International Women's Brass Conference a few years ago. And actually, we're working right now on making a wind ensemble version of that piece so that I can premiere at Kent State University this fall. So it's a fantastic process working with a composer, and I'm a huge fan of Lucy. I think that she's incredibly creative. And some of the things that she's come up with in Luminaries has been fantastic. And I can't wait to see what she does, particularly with the percussion for the wind ensemble rendition of her piece. And as for diversifying our repertoire, I think it's up to us to continually look to educate ourselves, because I think that anyone over a certain age can safely assume that our education, our musical upbringing is going to be disproportionately old, dead white guy. And so to keep our information fresh and learning about new pieces and new composers, we need to not lean on the information that we were given while we were students, but to be continually educating ourselves and exposing ourselves to new works. And that's our responsibility. And then when we discover those gems, those new pieces that are coming out, pass those on to friends, pass them on to your students, so that their education and their background can continually diversify.
Mm-hmm. Annika.
So I'm coming from a slightly different perspective on this, in that I'm a historic horn player. So in the words of, was it Amy just speaking? I play predominantly the music of dead white guys. But I am very aware that as a female horn player in the 21st century, generations upon generations upon generations of centuries of female horn players have been around. And I see my role today as amplifying their stories and stories of other groups of musicians who we just don't get to hear about so often today. They existed left, right, and center. And I think that one of the things that we can be doing as musicians is telling narratives, telling stories, and making the point that this is nothing new. These communities have been suppressed. They have had fewer opportunities, but these musicians existed. For example, I was chatting, again, we were talking earlier about how wonderful it's been to sort of talk to all sorts of people over the last 18 months. There's an academic in Australia who reached out to me because they were putting together an edition of, I think, Gallipoli opera, which was written for Venetian nuns, and they wanted to know some information about the horn writing of the time. So I think this is like late 17th, early 18th century, Venetian nuns were playing the horn. With the Prince Regent's Band, we're just putting together a program of transcriptions for brass of the music by Fanny Mendelssohn. So there we've got representation of, brass players playing music by female composers during the 19th century. So we've always been around, and I would really love to recommend the work of Katie Ambrose, who's been doing a lot about the history of horn players of colour in the States. We know that horn players, we have this tradition of slave horn players in certain places, and terrible stories about them, which I think do deserve to be amplified. I'm going to turn the question round about who I'd commission, because it's a bit difficult to commission composers who are dead. The music I would love to get the opportunity to play more of is the concertos played by Beata Picorni. She was a horn player in the late 18th, early 19th century. She was famed for playing concertos by great composers such as Giovanni Punto and her father. And her music is known, but it ought to be on the concert platform as much as Mozart.
And I'm just going to jump in with an extra one. Sorry, Hailey, I know you've got your hand up, but just whilst I've got Annika unmuted, and Andy, maybe you can weigh in on this. Do you think we should be asking modern composers to write new pieces, including historical instruments?
I'm married to a composer, so I'm married to a composer, so I'm very well aware of lots of composers writing for us. We are so colourful. Use us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole CD, whole album performed by His Majesty's Sackbuts and Cornets and the music of Martin Harry, which started off as one commission, and he just got the sound of the cornet and sackbut into his head, and it ended up writing a whole CD's worth of music, which is available through, if you just look up Martin Harry, and in fact, then Martin was commissioned to write some brass band pieces as well. I think that bringing that full circle back to your question, someone like Roddy Williams, who is not only the most phenomenal singer, but composing a lot. I don't know, Callum, perhaps before your time at the RAF, but I know, it might have been the Marines, actually. I might be getting that confused. I'll have to just double check, but I know he's had some commissions from some of the Forces bands as well. So someone like Roddy Williams, he has an idea, exactly as Annika said, of how to write for colours and sounds and sound worlds, rather than just the fact that they happen to be a modern instrument or an old instrument or it doesn't matter really. And if you listen to Bernard Herrmann soundtracks, for example, you'll hear Alan Lumsden playing the Serpent on at least 3 of those soundtracks, because they wanted an unworldly sound, and you don't get much more unworldly than the Serpent.
Never a
I
true
feel I
word
should be
spoken. Hailey, let's go to you.
Again, this is coming from more of a jazz perspective on the topic of diversifying repertoire. In learning jazz music, it's all about honoring the tradition, and you can't escape that. There are plenty of modern performers and composers from so many different backgrounds writing and performing jazz now. But for me and for a lot of my colleagues, we've been talking about going back and making sure that everyone, especially students, are understanding the context implications that came out of the tradition, and also learning which people we should no longer be idolizing when we teach about the elders and the greats, and maybe who we should be sort of getting more away from, and then looking back in history and saying like, oh, why didn't we learn more about Melba Liston, like female players or from different backgrounds, and sort of recontextualizing who we should be studying in the tradition.
There's a great line about tradition I always come to, which is tradition being peer pressure by dead people. We need to be suspicious. When anybody says it's tradition, we need to be asking questions.
I
have to chip in with a bit on that as well, because one of the traditions that I work with in a lot, and Stephen, you're going to want to come in on this. is the brass band tradition, which has been so setting its way for such a long time, but actually is now, I think, perhaps certainly quite a lot of the time from what I've experienced, and I know what Stephen's experienced because you've been at the forefront of most of this commissioning, is quite forward thinking, and yeah, there's a degree of relying on the old yellow music, we call it, that's been in the band cupboard for so many years that it's gone sort of slightly wee-coloured. But there's an awful lot of fantastic new music being written for, especially having people like Stephen, sort of really expanding what can be done on those instruments. So, I mean, okay, he's a known composer in the brass band world, but I had Rodney Newton, who composed a really famous tuba solo called Capriccio, which everyone plays for grade 8 or above or whatever, but it's a great piece of music. Rod composed a new tuba piece for me, and I know, Stephen, you've been working with a lot of great composers that have been taking the genre in a whole new direction.
Yeah, the problem with the brass band movement is that you've got about 95% of the people who turn up to a rehearsal and play that just want nothing to change forever, because they've always done it like that. It's that tradition word. And then you've got thinkers and movers, some of whom work in glorious isolation. Some are able to get funding, so their projects come to life. But, and I've also, it's a little bit different, but it's kind of connected. I've been trying to get the brass band movement to think about how they judge their brass band competitions, because they still use a system of marking and judging, which was around when brass bands started competing against each other, which was around 1850. So they put 3 old white men in a tent halfway back in the concert hall with no marking system, and 7 hours later they come out and say, these are results, with very little in the way of explanation how they came about their decision. So I've been trying to introduce a criteria marking system, which has had so much pushback, especially from the old white people that are not quite dead yet, against the system. So I'm being really patient with it, but I think there is, and I'm really happy that within the brass band movement now, we do have enough movers and shakers who are commissioning people and coming up with interesting collaborations with the Ballet Rambert, and doing historic projects, and just doing things that need to be done, that's different from the run-of-the-mill activity of just turning up and playing a brass instrument. I've commissioned over 350 pieces during my career. And next year, unbelievably, is my 60th year. So I've commissioned a bunch of pieces for that. And that's my way of, if you like, giving back to the next generation. When I was applying to go to music college and nobody would accept the euphonium, they would always say, you've got no music, you've got no repertoire. So they can't say that now. They can, but it means that they don't know it. And that's different. But but yeah, we just do what we can, Andy, and I love your enthusiasm and passion. I should have mentioned, with regard to your first question, that what you are, I don't know how many years it is since you've left college, but you're the perfect example of a musician who never ever wants to stop learning, who's inquisitive, who is collaborative, and who really, really cares about what you do. I'm not scratching your back here, but I know a lot of people that come out of college who play quite well basically say, where's my gig? I think someone else mentioned that, and the world ain't like that anymore. And we should never forget that it's a people business. A few of you have mentioned that about making contacts and the way people communicate. It's never been easier, but we've never done it as badly as we do now.
Mm-hmm.
You can with voice dictation on a mobile phone, you can reply to a text or an email in 10 seconds. And I know a lot of people that use their phones, but not for communicating. It's gratification and entertainment. So there are things that I know I've covered a few subject areas, but I've been quietly sitting and enjoying all the chat so far. But there are things that with the modern world, especially post-pandemic, where everything is like, the Coke can has been shaken up and we're not quite sure where it's all going to land once the bubbles stop frothing around. I'm worried that many of us, including myself, would like things to return in a year's time to how they were, but more and more I'm thinking that it's not going to be like that, and we have to use our creative powers and our talent to find new audiences, just as bands like the Corey Band have done. They've had more than 4 million hits on some of their pandemic recordings, which is extraordinary. They've reached audiences they would have never done during normal times at concerts. So I'm quiet again.
No, not at all. Great input. I like that you came in like a complete firework there, Steve. Thank you. So I know I've promised a few people that we're going to wrap up at an hour. As much as I could quite happily sit and talk to you all for the rest of time, I suspect none of you want that from me. So I've got 2 more questions that I'd really like to fit in before we disappear. And the first one, everyone has definitely got an answer for this one, which is, what do you all do when you're not doing music? I know you've all answered this on the actual podcast, but what are your favourite non-musical hobbies? I'll start. I'm an absolutely terrible baker, in as much as I like to bake, and everything I make is edible when I bake, not always when I cook. Everything looks like shit. So there you go. I am a bang average baker. That's me. So we'll go like we did at the beginning. So we'll start over with Ashley, and then we'll throw it around and see what everyone else likes to do.
I also bake. I'm a bread baker. I have a sourdough starter whose name is Danny Dovito, who's over a year old now. And then I also hike. My husband and I are hiking the Grand Canyon in December. So, yeah. Yep.
Well, you nearly made me spit out my water on screen because I knew that Danny DeVito was coming and I wasn't prepared. So I'm going to pass that. We'll pass over then, Andy K.
Yeah, it's been cooking and baking is my sort of what I do when I'm not doing music. Although I kind of sneak in, and I'm sure Annika's the same, quite a lot of research that doesn't tend to be necessarily playing an instrument, but it sort of takes over, and the love of sort of researching my topic has been something that has been more important to me than I ever thought it would. Actually, that sounds a bit sad, doesn't it? But I'm quite happy to go with it. So absolutely, and it's just been amazing to see, and I am slightly falling into the habit now of ordering, 1 takeaway a week, or even maybe 2 now and again. But I'm totally against this sort of easy sort of fix that everyone seems to have fallen into with the pandemic. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And cooking a small meal or baking a cake doesn't half make a lot of people happy. It mainly the person that does it. And then, as you say, when it's edible, everyone's happy. And I've remembered that I'm passing on to Andy now.
Nailed it.
Thanks, Andy. Well, I mean, I had the worst answer to this on the podcast originally, which is I don't really do anything else apart from music. And I did lots and lots of playing in lots of different areas, and that keeps me very busy just trying to stay in shape. And then I guess if Melissa's a bang average baker, maybe I'm a bang average composer and conductor and record producer, and if I'm not playing, I'm trying to catch up with all of those things that I've got behind on. So I pretty much wake up and start, it's terrible. I need to get some hobbies. Next pandemic, I'll start baking. And I'm passing to Callum.
What do I do when I'm not doing music? Well, I do an extraordinary amount of getting fat and drinking lots of beer and then sobering up and getting back to it. Well, I don't drink that much, but I do bloody love ice cream, so much so that when I was living in London, I Googled TripAdvisor, the top 10 ice cream shops to go to, and I walked to every single one of them. In fact, one of the trips was a 7-mile one-way walk, so I felt good about walking it off. But yeah, no, I recently got into learning German, so I'm trying to get a grip of that because I'd like to one day, ultimate dream, try and conduct an orchestra in Germany, and I'd like to be able to speak enough German to tell the fine musicians what I would like them to do. Beyond that, a bit stamp collecting.
I should have weighed in. That I'm also learning Greek. It's a continual process. I always forget that this is something that I'm supposed to be able to do as a half Cypriot person. Anyway, sorry, as you were, stamp collecting.
That's fine. I see your Instagram. Lots of interesting things happening on Instagram for you, Mel, particularly with the food making.
Like I said, some of it's edible.
Oh yeah, I'm now passing it on to Hailey. I do
Yes.
beg your pardon.
I feel like my hobby is collecting different hobbies and getting like okay at them and then moving on to a different one. So yeah, done the cooking and baking thing. I tried to paint a little bit. I tried to learn French a little bit, tried gardening in the city. But recently my partner and I have been building furniture. He does woodworking, so that's my new hobby I've been trying.
Oh.
Yeah. Passing on to Annika.
It's fascinating seeing all these various threads with things that are common to all of us. I'm a bread baker. I'm actually up in getting back to what Andy was saying about the sort of fast food and things like this. I'm actually up in Ludlow in Shropshire, which is the slow food capital of the UK. So this is a sort of place where it's really easy to go out and buy ingredients and spend. I've just started a sourdough starter. I'm late to the party, but that's what I've been doing over the last few days up here. But I just want to kind of come back to a couple of things. Actually, Callum, what you were saying about the importance of taking time out, and Andy, what you were saying about everything I do is music, and they're sort of very closely related, because I think that everything I do comes back to some aspect of me as a musician. And again, this is coming back to what Andy Kershaw was saying about the research. I can spend days and days and days going down rabbit holes of research, and I can spend lots of times in museums and art galleries and all these sort of things. And I just think all these things, be it learning to paint, be it making bread, it does come back to us as holistic musicians. So I think all these things are related, even if it's not actually having a physical instrument in my hand. But the one thing I will add is I make stained glass windows.
Ooh.
That's an interesting hobby. I think it's my turn. First off, I want to start by saying I'm so happy that you guys like baking and cooking. I don't. So I'm glad that there are people out there who like doing that.
I'll make stuff for you then.
I have an almost 5-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. And I homeschooled the almost 5-year-old through the pandemic. So I'm going to say that my hobby right now is sleeping. I think if I, the other things that I can consider hobbies, I'm working on my Spanish because I want to teach my son Spanish, because I think that the future is bilingual. I think that giving them the gift of being able to have that other language will be very beneficial, whatever they choose to do. But just kind of on a funny note, but Melissa was talking about learning Greek, and I was joking that my ancestry profile, the DNA ancestry thing, just got updated, and every time it updates, it's just a slightly more colorful map of Germany. It's like before, like you were German. Now your ancestry is Northern German and Southern German. So maybe I should be learning some German too. And I think I'm passing on to Steve.
Okay, I'll keep this really quick. We had a quick chat at the beginning. If you look behind, as far as you can see behind me, you can see a car and you can see something red on the top. Well, that's my kayak. And I do that about 3 times a week. I have water very near me, the Ashby Canal, which is a really beautiful canal. And I try and get the kayak on the water by 6 a.m. and I try to be home by 9. And it's absolutely the best thing. Now, as Annika says, a lot of things we do are connected with playing. This is connected with playing. So for me to work the upper body and challenge myself physically, but being totally at peace with nature is a beautiful combination. And when I'm not doing that, I'm riding my bike around the little farm roads around here, trying to dodge fast cars going in the other direction. So that combination helps my playing, helps my breathing, and is a real counterbalance to the, you know, the intensity that I take to the music. So yeah. And I like eating, but cooking, not so good at it. So I'll keep quiet about that.
Then Christian, you're up.
Okay, I'll be brief too, and I'm quite active. I'm a great believer in the adage that you don't necessarily have to be good at something to enjoy it, without wanting to go rude. So I do lots of running and cycling and swimming and things like that. I live in quite a hilly part of England, so I'll be going for a fell run right after this, basically. I know some people exercise and run socially, but just referencing what Amy said about the homeschooling over the last 18 months, we've got children 8 and 11, and it's been a challenging time, and my stress release was taking myself off for a run. And of course it does help cardiovascular with playing a brass instrument as well, or that's what I tell myself anyway.
I like that we're quite evenly split between getting fit and getting fat. I enjoy this very much. So it wouldn't be Baldur's Brass podcast if I didn't ask you this last question, all of you. We will whiz around super quickly. We're going to start with Hailey and Andy B, because I know that you have got to head off to other things, and we will wrap up after this. But it would, like I say, not be a Baldur's Brass podcast if I did not ask, if you had to have an extra nose on your body, where would you put it? Hailey, I'm coming to you first.
I'm going to stick with my original podcast answer, which is right next to my first nose. It would be a cool look.
Unique selling point.
I must have been too early for this question. I didn't get it before. I'm going to say I'd like to have an extra nose on the back of my head so I know what's coming.
Brilliant. I'm going to go to Andy Kershaw next, because I know you also didn't get this question.
Yeah, no, too early. Elbow.
Oh, who wants to go next?
I didn't get this question either. I'm with Andy. Back of the head. Yes, to get sort of 360.
I'd have mine here on my chin so I can smell food in stereo. How about
that? I quite like that one.
I wasn't asked this question. I think it's the most bizarre question ever, and I don't even
That's the point.
think I've got an answer for you. Stick it on the one I've got, then it might for comedy value.
Who hasn't gone yet? Amy, what do you reckon? Where would you put your extra nose?
Oh man, I didn't hide well enough. I think I would put it on the back of my head, and then I would just, my hair is usually in a ponytail. So I would just, if I just wanted it to go away, I could smell what was coming. But then if I wanted it to go away, I just pull it back in a ponytail, and voila, you don't see it anymore.
That's a good one. Right, we must have a couple of victims left.
Yeah.
Callum, Callum and Ashley.
I reckon I would probably put it on my forehead to cover up what I think is a slowly receding hairline. So that will distract from it.
Just embrace it, Callum.
Yeah,
I will do.
Join the club.
I'd either have to go the side by side or like one on top, because then I could have like a pair of sunglasses held, and then I could like practical.
Oh, I like this logic. See, in case you were wondering, mine would actually be under my arm, so that one, I could hide it away, but two, I would be the first person to know if I was smelly. Because there's nothing more embarrassing, is there, than somebody else knowing first. So I'd rather be, forefront on that one. Anyway, on that glamorous note, we are going to wrap up, because I know that people have got to head off. So I am very, very grateful to everybody that's here. I will be sharing this later on IGTV. It will go out as an audio file as well as another podcast edition. So everyone's information will also be shared, everyone's social handles and websites and things. But I am very, very grateful. Thank you so much for all coming and putting up with my nonsense for a second round. And feel free to head out if you've got to head out, because I can't figure out how to stop this thing immediately.
Thanks, Mel. Appreciate it.
Bye.
nice to
Great
meet
job.
everyone.
Good to see you all.
Thanks, Melissa.